I have procrastinated on investing for many years. And then I did one thing that finally got me started. Now, when I look back, the reason why I procrastinated so long on investing was not that I did not know that investing was important. I did, because I had learned about that from books and also from family. And for me personally, it also was not the fear of investing, so to lose all my money, that held me back. Because in a way, I trusted my sources. And I knew that even if there was some loss, long term it will be growth. But the reason for me that had me, delay for so long was that I was overwhelmed. I did not know where to start. I did not know what to actually do. I was confused about all the different types of investments. And in a way, I think I was also almost scared about a banker or a financial advisor talking me into a bad investment. And ironically, that is exactly what happened at some point. Because at some point I had felt so bad that I still haven't started yet. And then conveniently I got a call from my local bank telling me about this investment vehicle that is so flexible. And I guess part of me thought, this is my chance. And then it turned out to be the most costly investment I ever had. So if you want to avoid that and finally get started independently from a financial advisor, then keep watching. If we haven't met, I'm Sophia. I love to build wealth. I also love to talk about that. And I hate living frugal. That's why my main goal is to build wealth and to live in luxury at the same time. If that sounds like you as well, consider subscribing. And the one thing that I did to finally overcome my procrastination was more like a question, really. And it was, what is the next step? What is the next step? And to ask that question immediately reduced overwhelm for me, because now I had a quest. And that was to find out what the next step is. It was not start to invest, because obviously that was too vague for me. It was also not make a degree in finance before you get started. It was only find out what the next step is on my overall goal to start investing. And for me, in the beginning, that simply meant research, because I felt like I didn't know enough about investing yet. So I looked for books and I watched YouTube videos and I read articles. Now, I did not do this back then, but I would probably recommend for you to set yourself a deadline, because otherwise you can get stuck forever in the research phase as well, in case the research step is also your next step in your financial journey. And then usually that was the way for me. Out of this process, out of the research process, the next step after that also reveals itself. And for me back then, it was find a broker. All right, now that I think about it, after what I had researched, for me, it was crystal clear that I wanted to invest into the stock market. So it was not real estate or any other asset class. It was the stock market. That is why my next step was to find a brokerage account so that I could actually invest into stocks and funds. And at that point, all I had was a bank account with my local bank. And then again, I started to research, but now the research was way more narrowed because I started to research brokerage accounts. And I gotta be honest with you, that step alone took me several weeks. And I remember I tried to talk about this with someone, like, hey, I'm looking into brokerage accounts at the moment, which one do you use? And then the answer of that person was, oh no, I'm not investing, that is not my thing, or something like that. And I also didn't want to go to a local bank because I knew they would be more expensive. And there was still my, being cautious about the financial advisors they usually have, because their interest and my own would not necessarily align. So I felt a little bit alone, in that decision, but I knew at some point I just have to get it done. So eventually I picked one, I opened the brokerage account, and at that point my next step at the time was done. And then again, the next step automatically appeared out of this one, because now that I have a broker, what do I invest in? And not just stock market, because I already knew that, but that's again very vague. But what is the specific thing that I'm going to buy through my new opened brokerage account? So my next step was find an investment strategy. And that's what I did. I again started with research, again narrowed down to investment strategies. And I read books, I watched YouTube videos, and I read articles. And after all that researching, I knew that I wanted to go for passive investing. So I didn't want to go through the hurdle of picking single stocks. And in that phase, I found out about ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are funds that are very low in cost, and they contain several different companies. And not just that, there are ETFs that represent a whole market, a whole region, the whole world. And then I picked an ETF or two that I wanted to invest in. And as you might already notice while I talk about this, like the next step seems to get easier and easier, because now the hard work is already behind me, even though I didn't realize it was the hard work, because I broke it down into those little steps. So it didn't feel like hard work at all. I think that's the magic of this concept actually, and it reminds me of this one picture I found on Pinterest that shows nicely how important it is to pick a next step that is actually accessible. That is also why now, whenever I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed, I always ask myself, okay, what's the next step? And if I still feel overwhelmed, then I try to break it down even further, into an even smaller step, into something that gets me to act very fast. And then the only step that was left on my overall goal to start investing was to actually buy the ETF that I chose from my investment strategy through my brokerage account. And it was done. And I think what this question does, what the next step is, it allows us to focus on one thing and one thing only at a time. And that is what reduces the overwhelm, because we can block out all the 1,000 other things that we might think about that we have to do. It also forces us to clarity, because we do have to get specific, right? So we have to find and define what the next step is. And for me, first, it really was chaos of thoughts in my head. Oh my God, investing is so complicated. But then to find the relevant next step was really like the fog lifting. And the third thing is that it really brings us to action. Because if you do this right, you don't do anything else before you did not finish your very next step, whatever that step is for you. Now, I guess this question, what is the next step, does require that you know what you want, at least roughly. If you have trouble coming up with something, what I found to be helpful in that decision of, in what direction do I actually want to go, is a reflection or a review. So to sit down and go through some questions. There is a set of questions that I ask myself every year, and it starts with simple questions like, okay, what were the major events in my life in the past year? It doesn't have to be a year. It also can be just a few weeks or a few months. And then also, what went well financially for me this year, or what didn't go well financially this year? Stuff like that. And questions like this can also help to clarify your priorities. I put the questions that I use into a template. So if you want to use those, you can. It's free, link down below. And then once you have found your first vague goal, may it be, I want to make more money, or also I want to start investing, then you can also ask yourself, what is the next step? I hope you've enjoyed this video and it helped you get unstuck by asking a simple but very powerful question. Thank you for watching, and until next time. Bye-bye.